All right, so today we're diving into something that's gotten some attention lately. It's called the Q code prayer.
Yeah, this one's definitely piqued my curiosity.
From what we've gathered, it claims to use a secret prayer from a hidden gospel to help people unlock abundance.
Yeah, the whole hidden knowledge thing is always a popular theme.
For sure. People are always looking for an edge,
Yeah.
a way to improve their lives. So let's take a closer look at this and see what we can make of it.
Sounds good.
So the Q code prayer itself is basically a 7-minute audio track.
Mm.
And it's supposed to feature this special prayer that you listen to every day.
Okay. And what's the supposed mechanism here? How does it work?
Well, they claim that listening to it activates your pineal gland. That's often called the third eye. And supposedly that allows you to tap into some kind of hidden power for manifesting wealth and success.
Ah, I see. So they're playing into that whole mystical third eye concept. But from a scientific perspective, there's no evidence to suggest the pineal gland has anything to do with manifesting wealth. I mean, we know it produces melatonin, which regulates sleep cycles.
Right.
But connecting it to manifesting abundance, that's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But they weave quite a story around it.
Oh, yeah.
So the website tells the story of this guy, Simon Carter. He's the creator of the Q code prayer.
Hmm.
And he was apparently going through some tough times financially.
That's a pretty relatable experience for a lot of people, unfortunately.
Exactly. And they really try to emphasize that feeling of struggle.
Hmm.
Like he even talks about not being able to fix a leak in his daughter's bedroom.
Ah, I see. Playing on those everyday struggles.
Yep. And that's where Father Michael comes in. Carter meets this priest while he's on a work trip to the Vatican. And Father Michael is described as this kind of like maverick within the church.
Okay. Intriguing.
So Father Michael claims to have discovered this hidden gospel tucked away in the Vatican Library. They call it the Gospel of Q.
Ah, yes. The Vatican Library, miles of shelves, and who knows what secrets hidden within.
Right. And according to Father Michael, this Gospel of Q contains the original teachings of Jesus on manifesting abundance. But these teachings were supposedly suppressed by the church for centuries.
Hmm. So they're tapping into that whole idea of hidden knowledge being kept from the masses.
Exactly. It's like a conspiracy theory, but with a spiritual twist.
Fascinating. So where does the prayer fit into all of this?
So within this Gospel of Q, Carter supposedly finds this 7-minute prayer. And reciting it is what's supposed to activate the pineal gland and connect you with this divine power for manifesting.
Okay. So it's presented as this simple but powerful tool for transforming your life.
Right. And it's not just about the theory either. The website is loaded with testimonials from people who claim they've used the Q code prayer and experienced amazing results, like financial windfalls, career advancements, even improvements in their health.
Testimonials can be really persuasive, but it's important to remember that they're just anecdotes. They're not scientific proof. Without controlled studies, it's impossible to know if those outcomes are really because of the prayer or just coincidence.
That's a good point. We have to be careful about drawing conclusions based on personal stories alone.
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting how they try to make it sound scientific.
Yeah, they use a lot of terms like frequency and energy.
Right. Like they talk about the pineal gland resonating at the specific frequency.
432 hertz?
Yeah, 432 hertz, which they call the God frequency.
Oh, wow.
And they even mention a study done by some neuroscientist friend of Simon Carter, claiming that it shows changes in brain activity after using the Q code prayer, especially in the area of the pineal gland.
But even if that's true, correlation doesn't equal causation, right?
Exactly. Just because there might be some brain activity changes doesn't mean those changes are caused by the prayer, or that they actually lead to any of the promised outcomes.
Right. It could just be a coincidence.
Exactly. And there's another thing. This supposed study they mention, it hasn't been published in any reputable scientific journals, or independently verified as far as we can tell.
That's a bit suspicious, isn't it?
It is. It makes you wonder why, if this prayer is so effective, they wouldn't want to have their claims backed up by solid evidence.
Yeah, you'd think they'd be shouting it from the rooftops if they had real scientific proof.
Right. It's a common pattern we see with these kinds of products. They use scientific-sounding language and refer to vague studies to make themselves sound credible. But when you dig deeper, there's often not much substance there.
Okay, so we should probably take those scientific claims with a grain of salt. But what about all the personal stories on the website? Those people who say the Q code prayer really worked for them.
Sure, people's personal experiences are important, but we have to be cautious about relying too heavily on anecdotes. Well, for one thing, they're often emotionally charged. People want to believe that something worked for them, So they might focus on the positive outcomes and downplay or even ignore any other factors that might have been involved.
Like someone might say they got a big promotion because of the Q code prayer,
Uh-huh.
when in reality it was due to their hard work and talent.
Exactly. Or they might have received an unexpected inheritance, but they attribute it to the prayer instead.
So those stories can be compelling. But it's important to remember that they're not necessarily representative of everyone's experience
Right, and we can't rule out the possibility of coincidence.
or placebo effect.
Exactly. So while those testimonials might be inspiring, it's crucial to maintain a healthy skepticism.
To look beyond the surface and consider all the possible explanations.
And that brings us to another important aspect of the Q code prayer, the way it's being marketed. It's interesting how they bring in figures like Jeffrey Epstein and the Vatican's wealth.
Yeah, it's almost like they're trying to say, hey, look, even these powerful people are using this.
Right, like it's some sort of secret that the elites are in on.
But let's be real here. There's absolutely no evidence to suggest that the Vatican has anything to do with this, or that Jeffrey Epstein, for that matter, ever even heard of the Q code prayer.
Yeah, the Vatican's wealth comes from centuries of land ownership and art collections and investments. It's well documented. There's no mystery there.
Right. It feels like they're just trying to use those associations to make their product seem more credible.
Yeah, it's a way of tapping into people's existing beliefs and maybe even some conspiracy theories.
And it plays into that whole us versus them mentality. Like they're saying, we have this secret knowledge that the powerful don't want you to know.
Right, which of course makes it all the more tempting.
So it's a clever marketing strategy.
Right.
But we have to be aware of those tactics and not let ourselves be swayed by them.
Absolutely. It's all about critical thinking. Don't just take their word for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do your own research, look for evidence, and think for yourself.
Right, and if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
So what's the bottom line here? What do we want our listeners to take away from all of this?
Well, I think the main thing is to be skeptical. Don't believe everything you hear, especially when it comes to products that promise easy solutions.
Right. Do your research, ask questions, and be critical of the information you're presented with.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to seek out advice from trusted sources. If you're not sure about something, talk to an expert or do some more digging on your own.
It's all about empowering yourself with knowledge.
Exactly. Knowledge is power.
So while the Q code prayer might have some appealing aspects, we have to remember that real and lasting change usually takes effort and work.
Right. There's no magic bullet.
And if you're still curious about the Q code prayer, you can find a link to their website in the description. But as we've discussed, it's important to approach it with a critical eye.
And ultimately, it's up to each individual to decide what they believe.
Well said.